back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And
Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Gruenfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Tuesday, October 1st. We have a lot to cover on the show today. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the Super Chat button in the chat. This will help create a super chat of any thought or comment you want to see be put out on the live broadcast. I will acknowledge that during the live broadcast, and it makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate your guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment, gsmcpodcast.net. That is gsmcpodcast.net. So let's get into what we are going to discuss for today. So we're going to start off the show. We are going to recap last night's game between the Seahawks and the Lions, another shootout between these two teams. So we'll get into the specifics of it. Then in the second part of the show, we'll talk about the Jets-Broncos game, the Jets dropping to 2-2 after a 10-9 loss to the Broncos, and we'll get into that and talk about it. Then in the third part of the show, we'll talk about the Commanders. Another impressive win all over the Cardinals, defeating them 42-14, the final score. And I thought that was going to be a back-and-forth game. Well, it was in the beginning, but not so much as the game progressed. So we'll get into that game as well. We'll talk about the Commanders going forward. Are they legit? And then in the fourth part of the show, we'll talk about the Buccaneers-Eagles game. Eagles losing that 33-16, once again falling to the Buccaneers. So kind of picking up where they left off when they matched up in the playoffs. And then in the final part of the show, we'll recap the other game from last night between the Titans and the Dolphins, which was not as entertaining as Lions Seahawks, but I was locked in on it for fantasy purposes, and we'll get into that as well and what happened with that. So let's get into the first topic, which is talking about the Lions and the Seahawks. So whenever these two teams match up, it's always high scoring. For whatever reason, it's always high scoring, and that continued last night. Now, I had it on the lower side. I said 27-21, but that was not the case. The Lions ended up getting the win 42-29. This game was back and forth all night long. The Lions were up. Well, it was really the Seahawks trying to keep up because the Lions, they jumped out to a 14-0 lead. You had a David Montgomery touchdown to put them up 7-0. Then a DK Metcalf fumble as the Seahawks were driving. Lions turned that into a touchdown drive. Jahmyr Gibbs from 3 yards out. Then the Seahawks did answer with a touchdown drive, 10 plays, 70 yards. And that was a Kenneth Walker touchdown who had a really good game last night. So that made it 14-7. Then the Lions answered with another touchdown drive. And that was another Jahmyr Gibbs touchdown from 1 yard out. Then a couple of punts, and then the Seahawks, they attempted a 62-yard field goal by Jason Myers, which ended up getting blocked. Or actually, I don't think it got blocked. I think it just fell short, and they tried to run it back, the Lions, but they couldn't do anything with it. So then, in the second half, all touchdown drives in the third quarter. Seahawks, they went 10 plays, 75 yards to make it 21-14. Geno Smith connected with Barner for a 9-yard touchdown, so that made it 21-14. Then the Lions answered with a touchdown drive that was set up by a pass to David Montgomery for 40 yards. It looks like he was going to get tackled, but he just kept going for 40 yards. So that was a big play. Then a 23-yard pass to Tim Patrick, and then they did a little Philly special as Amon-Ra St. Brown threw a touchdown to Jared Goff. 7-yard touchdown. So that put them up by a couple of scores. Then the Seahawks, they answered a 28-yard run by Kenneth Walker. Then Geno Smith later in the drive on 2nd and 16 connected with Tyler Lockett for 29 yards. And then Kenneth Walker from 1 yard out scored a touchdown. There was a penalty because they went for 2, and it was a defensive pass interference on Carlton Davis, so they got another try from the 1, but they ended up not getting the 2 once again. So it was 28-20 at that point. Then the Lions answered again, and Jameson Williams wide open. Nobody was there. Scores a 70-yard touchdown to make it 35-20. And then the Seahawks once again answered. Kenneth Walker from 21 yards out. So that made it 35-27. Couple of punts in the fourth quarter. And then Jared Goff threw another touchdown pass to Amon-Ra St. Brown. And that was really all she wrote at that point. 42-27. Seahawks turned it over on downs. Then there was a safety. Jared Goff got sacked in the end zone. And it looked like he was able to move the ball out of the end zone, get the ball out of the end zone, so it wasn't a safety, but they reviewed it and it ended up being a safety, but it didn't matter. Seahawks got the ball back, and Geno Smith threw a pick to Kirby Joseph, and that was all she wrote. 42-29 the final score was, and the Lions finally get the best of the Seahawks, and both teams are now 3-1 on the season. And Jared Goff, I want to talk about his game. So, did not have an incompletion last night. He went 18 of 18, 292 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, 2 passing touchdowns, but also had a receiving touchdown in this game. He was solid. And, I said the Lions offense has kind of been, I don't want to say struggling, but at least, Jared Goff has been struggling a little bit. He's gotten off to a slow start, but he got it going last night, and this is a team that he plays really well against, despite the Lions losing the previous matchups against, but he's been solid. He does well against the Seahawks, but last night was his best game of the year, and maybe this is the game that jump starts him and he really gets it going. And the Lions continue to run the football well. Jahmyr Gibbs, 2 rushing touchdowns, 78 yards on the ground. David Montgomery, 40 yards on the ground and a touchdown. Jameson Williams, only 2 receptions, but for 80 yards and a touchdown. Sam Laporta had 4 for 53. Tim Patrick, 2 for 52. Amon-Ra St. Brown had 6 for 45 and a touchdown. Also had the passing touchdown as well. And, Carlton Davis had a fumble recovery in this game. Kirby Joseph, an interception. The Lions had 3 sacks off of Geno Smith. Jake Bates was 6 for 6 on extra points, because that's all the Lions did. They kicked no field goals in this game. And then as for the Seahawks, Geno Smith threw the ball 56 times for 395 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Kenneth Walker, only 80 yards on the ground, but 3 rushing touchdowns in this game. So it was big to get him back. At one point, they had like a lateral play. I forget. I think it was Smith and Jigba caught it, and then he lateraled it to Charbonnet. But Zach Charbonnet only 2 carries for 15 yards. And he had 5 receptions for 39 yards as well. DK Metcalf was the leading receiver. No surprise there for Seattle on 12 targets, 7 receptions for 140 yards. Tyler Lockett, 5 for 61. Jackson Smith and Jigba had 8 for 51. Charbonnet, 5 for 39, like I said. Kenneth Walker, 4 for 36. Like I said, DK Metcalf had a fumble in this game. And a game like this, that was definitely costly. But, look, DK Metcalf has gotten off to a great start, so can't really get on him for that. It happens. And the Seahawks defense had 3 sacks in this game. Jason Myers was 0 for 1 on the field goals because, he attempted that 60-yarder but was 3 for 3 on extra points. But, this was a big win for the Lions. Next week, they take on the bye week. So forget what I was going to say there. And then for Seattle, they're taking on the Giants. So, you can't really get on Seattle. Look, at some point they were going to lose. There's only 2 undefeated teams left. This was a game that I thought the Lions could finally, get over that hump, so to speak, and finally beat Seattle. Because for some reason they've had a problem with that. But Seattle is still a good team. They got a lot of playmakers on this offense. And, they were missing key guys on the defensive line last night. But this is still a good team. And right now, they're still in first place in the NFC West. You got the 49ers right behind them at 2-2. So, but this is still a good team, and this was a good test for them last night, and it's just the Lions are really good. Lions are really good, and this was my Super Bowl pick coming out of the NFC, and so far so good. But yeah, Detroit finally gets the best of the Seahawks, and yeah, they're going into the bye at 3-1, and the Seahawks they'll be going home to take on the Giants, which I think is a very winnable game for them, and I think they should win that game, but who knows? The way the NFL has gone so far, I have no idea. But yeah, it definitely was a very entertaining game. A lot of playmakers on both teams, and maybe we see this matchup again in the playoffs. You never know. So, but let me know what you guys think about this game. What were some of your takeaways from it? Again, I think Jared Goff's performance last night, very encouraging, because he's gotten off to a slow start. I think touchdown to interception ratio, I think it's 6-5 right now. But yeah, he was perfect last night. 18 of 18, and this could be the game that really, or actually the touchdown to interception ratio is 5-4, my mistake. But yeah, this could be the game that really gets him going, and I guess it's a good time for the bye week, because Lions could clean a couple things up, and then come out firing on all cylinders. And when they come out of the bye week, they take on the Cowboys in week 6. So that's going to be a very interesting game, because of course that's the rematch from the second to last week of the season, when the Lions, they thought they went ahead, but they called back that 2-point conversion because the tackle didn't report eligible, even though he did, and there was just that whole miscommunication there between the refs and the Lions. It was a mess. And to be honest, the way the Cowboys are playing, I know they're 2-2, but they're not playing well. That's a weaker Cowboy team, and I think the Lions, I mean, it's still, we're 2 weeks away from it, but a little less than 2 weeks away from it, but I think the Lions should win that game. Lions are the better team. So, but let me know what you guys think about the game from last night. What were some of your takeaways from it? Again, Seattle at some point was going to lose, and I figured it would be last night. Offense was still able to move the ball, but they just could not stop Detroit. So, but yeah, an entertaining game nonetheless. At least one of the games is entertaining. So, we're going to take our first break of the show, and then when we come back, we'll talk about a game that maybe wasn't entertaining, maybe for certain people was entertaining, but yeah, we'll talk about the Jets and their loss to the Broncos when we return from our first break. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, some losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh,
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for the second part of the show, we are now going to get into talking about the New York Jets and their loss to the Denver Broncos. And it was an interesting game. It was an interesting game. It's really how I could put it. And, the Broncos, they were coming off of that convincing win against the Buccaneers. They went into Tampa and they won 26-7. And, with this game here, it was lower scoring. Both offenses struggled. The weather was bad. But the Broncos did just enough. They did a little bit more to pull past the Jets. But yeah, this was a slugfest. Both offenses struggled. I mean, Bo Nix had like negative 60 passing yards or something like that. I mean, he finished with 60 passing yards on the day. But it just was not good. Aaron Rodgers did not have a good first half. I think he had like 25 passing yards at the end of the first half. It was something ridiculous like that. But yeah, it just was not a good game. The Jets got the ball to start the game. I mean, they went 3-and-out quickly, but Garrett Wilson fumbles, and you thought, oh boy. But the Jets defense was able to, keep the Broncos out of field goal range. Well, first of all, there was a penalty, offensive pass interference, so that put them back to the Jets 40. Then there was another bad play, Bo Nix to Troy Franklin for -4 yards. So it's just the Broncos did nothing on that drive. There were a lot of punts in the first quarter, a lot of 3-and-outs. Then the Broncos ended up fumbling. Tyler Beatty, who actually, a scary situation on the sideline, so he got put on a stretcher. Not sure what happened there, but got hit, went to the sideline, and then he was getting put on a stretcher, so hopefully everything's all right there. But that's, scary situation there. And the Jets ended up turning that fumble into a field goal drive, so Greg Zuerlein from 23 yards out. From the Broncos' 5-yard line. So they were at the Broncos' 1-yard line. And first and goal from the 1, Breece Hall can't get in. Breece Hall, second and goal, can't get in. Then Rodgers tries to throw it on third down. They get nothing. Then they were going to go for it on fourth and goal, and then John Simpson, their center, gets called for a false start, and they have to kick a field goal. So that was bad. The Jets should have got 7 there. Or put Braylon Allen in. That's one thing that Jet fans were talking about is, why is Braylon Allen not in the game? Because Braylon Allen, their rookie, he's been doing well. So you could have gave him a shot, but they didn't. And they settled for 3. More punts. Jets were up 6-0 going into the second half. 9 plays, 56 yards, minute and 47 of time of possession. Rodgers connected with Lazard for 25 yards. Then there was a 21-yard pass play to Mike Williams that got reviewed. It was originally incomplete, but they ruled it complete. But, yeah, Greg Zuerlein, 35-yard field goal, so that made it 6-0 Jets. More punts, and then the Broncos went 11 plays, 87 yards, and Bo Nix connected with Courtland Sutton. Key play in that game was 3rd and 11 from the Broncos' 24, and Bo Nix connected with Courtland Sutton for 29 yards. Then there was a penalty, defensive pass interference on Michael Carter. Then there was another offsides penalty on the Jets. And like I said, on 3rd and 7 from the Jets' 8, Bo Nix connected with Courtland Sutton for an 8-yard touchdown. So that put the Broncos up 7-6. Then the Jets, they answered with a field goal drive. So Rodgers connects with Allen Lazard on this drive for a first down for 12 yards. And then he gets an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty for flicking the ball and pointing his fingers down the field. Wasn't even looking at the Broncos guy. So that was a costly penalty. It's just some of these calls that the refs make. I know they got to do that, but, I mean, they don't let the players do anything. I mean, Jameson Williams did the old Jimmy Graham touchdown celebration where he dunked it on the goalpost. I mean, why can't you just let the players have fun? It just doesn't make sense. But I don't know. That's one of the things that I typically don't agree with is these unsportsmanlike conduct penalties. But yeah, so that ended up being costly because that put the Jets back. So they had to settle for yet another Greg Zuerlein field goal to make it 9-7. So then we go to the fourth quarter. Broncos answer with the field goal drive. They started running the football more, and, that proved to be effective. A lot of Javonte Williams runs on that drive. They got to the Jets 29, and Will Lutz kicks a 47-yard field goal to put them up 10-9. Couple of punts. Jets turned it over on downs. Then the Broncos, they missed a 50-yard field goal with Lutz. And then the Jets go down the field, 9 plays to Breece Hall, then a defensive pass interference, and that set them up in good field position. They got up to the Broncos 32. Now, Rodgers tried to hit Garrett Wilson at one point late in the game. And if Garrett Wilson turns around and sees the ball, Rodgers hits him. And that would have been a huge play, but that ended up not happening. That was the second to last drive of the game for the Jets. But yeah, so they got to the Broncos 32. Zerline attempted a 50-yarder, and he ended up missing it. And the Jets ended up losing. So Bo Nix, he finished on the day 12 for 25 for 60 yards, a touchdown, no interceptions. The Broncos ran the ball for 126 yards. Javonte Williams had 77 yards on the ground. Jaleel McLaughlin had 46 yards on the ground. The leading receiver was Courtland Sutton, 3 for 60 and a touchdown. Broncos defense, 5 sacks in this game. And then for the Jets, Aaron Rodgers went 24 of 42 for 225 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Breece Hall and Braylon Allen, their rushing stats, Braylon Allen, 8 carries for 34 yards. Breece Hall, 10 carries for 4 yards. Could not get anything going on the ground. Rodgers had 5 for 26. And actually got hurt in this game at one point. Mike Williams was their leading receiver, 4 receptions for 67 yards. Alan Lazard, 5 for 58. Garrett Wilson, 5 for 41. Tyler Conklin, 4 for 17. Garrett Wilson had a fumble in this game, like I said. No sacks by the Jets defense. And, yeah, the Greg Zuerlein field goal was a back burner at the end. But, yeah, not a good game. Offensive line could not protect Aaron Rodgers. And like I said, he got hurt in this game. He gets sacked, and, he came up limping. And you can't have that. The Jets have done a great job these first, 3 games before this one in protecting Rodgers. Even against the 49ers, I know they didn't play well. I know they got destroyed, but they protected Rodgers. Rodgers really didn't get hit in that game. This game, he got hit a lot. And that's concerning. That is really concerning. Because if that continues, well, you're going to see Tyrod Taylor sooner than later. And I don't want to see that. Also, the play calling. Play calling was not great. The fact that, you didn't try to establish the run, give the ball more to Breece Hall and Braylon Allen, that's a problem, especially in those weather conditions. The running game should play a factor. I mean, look at what Breece Hall did against the Patriots in Foxborough last year in the snow. He had 32 carries, I believe. Here he only had 10. Why are you not trying to establish the run? They kind of abandoned it. I got to give the Broncos defense credit because they've played great these last 2 weeks. I mean, the offense is still struggling, but despite that, they got a good defense. So I give the Broncos defense credit, but, the Jets, this was a game they should have won. Should have won this game. And a lot of people point to the head coach. And look, I have to admit, as much as I said I'm going to go towards the storm, go towards it and be optimistic about the Jets, I will acknowledge that this is that storm, and that's the coaching. That is what is ultimately going to hold them back. And the fact that the Jets had all this time off, you had a mini bye week between when they played the Patriots to now, and they came out like that, that falls at the head coach. Like, look, Rodgers didn't play well, and he acknowledged it. I know people are saying he didn't acknowledge that, but he said that he made some bad throws. But how is your team not prepared for this game? You had all that time off. And the other thing, too, is So Robert Saleh, now he walked back these comments, but he talked about how they might have to dial back the cadences a little bit, because now Rodgers likes to get the defense to jump off sides, but instead you got the offensive linemen or just players in general in the Jets jumping and causing false starts. And Saleh said we got to dial it back. And Rodgers said in the press conference, well, that's one way to do it. But we got a subscription from Cooley Bands. So we appreciate the follow, the subscription. But anyways, so you had Rodgers say, that's one way to do it, but let's hold players accountable. So, of course, you're going to have people saying Rodgers is right. Then you got people saying, well, Rodgers shouldn't be saying that. I mean, Rodgers is right. It's what he does. The free play is one of his weapons. And if you want to dial that back, you're taking that away from him. So, yeah, it's not looking good right now. It's things like that where you're like, this season could definitely unravel. So I'm hoping that's not the case because I would like to see the Jets do well. And look, I don't think, even with Rodgers not playing great on Sunday, I still think, he's still got good football left. But the problem is you got a head coach who, is different from the other head coaches that he's been a part of. Because the previous two head coaches that Rodgers had, you won a Super Bowl with one, but you went to multiple NFC championship games with Mike McCarthy and, you went to multiple with Matt LaFleur in 2019 and 2020. Robert Saleh is unproven. And before Aaron Rodgers, Robert Saleh has a terrible record. And that record continues to get worse. And now you look at the Jets' schedule coming up. They got the Vikings in London, one of the two remaining undefeated teams. And then you got the Bills at home. And you still got no Hassan Reddick. Some of the guys that you let go on the defensive line, well, you kind of miss them. Who was on the Broncos defensive line on Sunday? John Franklin Myers, a guy that they let go to bring in Hassan Reddick. I think that was one of the reasons why they let him go. Or they traded him. Some of these under-the-radar guys that we didn't expect the Jets really to miss, they kind of miss them. So, yeah, it's not a good game for the Jets. And not on the same page with Garrett Wilson still. So it's a concern, and they could very easily go 2-4 if they lose these next two games. Or it's definitely possible to lose these next two games. I mean, obviously, yeah, if you lose the next two, you are 2-4. And then you take on Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh on Sunday Night Football, I believe. You could be 2-5. Going up against TJ Watt, if this offensive line can't protect him. But, yeah, not a good game for the Jets. But let me know what you guys think about the game. What were your takeaways from it? Broncos improved to 2-2. Jets dropped to 2-2. So before we go to break, just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the chat, hit the super chat button if you want to put out a thought or comment that you want me to acknowledge during the live broadcast. Makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate your guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us. So as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment, gsmcpodcast.net. That is gsmcpodcast.net. So when we come back from our next break, we will talk about the Washington Commanders. We're going to talk about their win over the Cardinals, 42-14. Talk about another stellar performance by Jaden Daniels and the Commanders team. And are they legit? Well, we'll talk about it when we come back. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube. Absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we are now going to talk about the Washington Commanders and their win over the Cardinals. So I did think that this game was going to be back and forth. And I did say probably take the over in this game. And it looked like that was going to be the case early on. But this game was all Commanders. They dominated this game. And the Cardinals have put up a couple of lackluster performances these last couple weeks after, that huge win against the Rams, a team that's owned them. They won, 41-10. And then these last couple weeks, they've struggled offensively. They did run the ball better. James Conner had a good game, but that was really it. I mean, the Cardinals' offense was non-existent really throughout most of this game. But to kind of go through it, I mean, the Cardinals, they started off with the ball. They went 9 plays, 55 yards down the field, and this was on 4th and goal. Kyler Murray connected with Marvin Harrison Jr. for a 2-yard touchdown, so that put them up 7-0. Commanders answered immediately on their first drive as they continue to not punt. They went 9 plays, 70 yards down the field. Brian Robinson Jr. scores a 6-yard touchdown to make it 7-7. Then the Cardinals punted. Commanders score yet another touchdown to put them up 14-7. And this was a McNichols 27-yard touchdown. So Jeremy McNichols was, getting not really the start, but was the backup running back in this game because of Austin Eckler being out after suffering the concussion last week. So Commanders scored again. Cardinals punted. Then Jane Daniels threw a pick. So still no punts. Throws an interception. This was intended for McLaurin, so that got intercepted. The Cardinals did nothing with it. Then the Commanders actually did punt. The Cardinals, however, turned it over on downs. It was on 4th and 1 from the Commanders' 35, and Kyler Murray got sacked for a 7-yard loss. And then the Commanders kicked the field goal. Seibert, a 45-yard field goal to make it 17-7 at the half. Then to open up the second half, Commanders went right down the field and scored. There was a defensive pass interference call for 47 yards, and Jaden Daniels scored a rushing touchdown from 9 yards out. So that made it 24-7. Cardinals punted. Commanders kicked a field goal. Seibert kicked a 38-yard field goal, so that made it 27-7. Then the Cardinals did answer with a touchdown. James Conner from 6 yards out, so that made it 27-14. Then the Commanders scored again. Jaden Daniels connected with Terry McLaurin, and they went for the 2 and got it with Zach Ertz. So that made it 35-14. Cardinals fumbled, and then the Commanders scored once again, another Jeremy McNichols touchdown from 7 yards out, and that made it 42-14. That was the final score. Jaden Daniels on the day went 26 of 30 for 233 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. Brian Robinson Jr. had 21 carries for 101 yards and a touchdown. Jeremy McNichols had 2 touchdowns. Jaden Daniels also had a rushing touchdown. So 4 rushing touchdowns in the game for the Commanders. Olamide Zaccheaus was actually the leading receiver for the Commanders. He had 6 receptions for 85 yards. Terry McLaurin, 7 for 52 and a touchdown. Noah Brown had 3 for 26. Zach Ertz, 3 for 22. Fumble recovery by Frankie Louvu. That was one of the takeaways they had from the Cardinals in this game. Commanders' defense had 4 sacks. Defense played well. Kyler Murray only went 16-22 for 142 yards and a touchdown. James Conner had a good game, 18 carries for 104 yards and a touchdown. Marvin Harrison Jr., 5 for 45 and a touchdown. Michael Wilson had a fumble loss in this game. Trey Benson and DJ Dallas both had fumbles, but they were not lost. And the Cardinals' defense had no sacks. Matt Prater, 2 for 2 on extra points. I picked him up in fantasy and because he was doing well this year, and of course he only gets 2 fantasy points for me. But another impressive performance by the Commanders. They improved to 3-1 on the season, and they are in sole possession of first place in the NFC East. So how about that? And I had them around 3-4 wins, and they're already at 3. So when I did that, I didn't feel great about it because then I'm like, I feel like I feel like I'm gonna end up being wrong, and I'm definitely gonna be wrong about the Commanders. But my thing is this: it's really because of the defense. I mean, they could have lost the Bengals game, they could have lost the Giants game, and be 1-3 right now. But that's not the case here. You know, those are hypotheticals. They're 3-1. Now you look at their schedule coming up. You got the Browns at home, which the way the Browns are playing, and we'll get to them this week. You know, you could definitely win that game. At the Ravens is going to be tough. That one they probably lose, but who knows? I'm going to pencil that in as a loss. But then you got the Panthers at home. You got the Bears at home, at the Giants, home against the Steelers. I mean, this team is, this team could be sitting at like 7-3. A little after the midway point. And you look at the other teams in the division. The Giants, like I hate to say it, but they're kind of a lost cause. I think this is going to be a really ugly season for them. I mean, it already is, but it's going to continue that way. And then you look at Dallas and Philly, and we're going to get into Philly in a little bit, but they aren't that impressive. Now, Philly, I thought, turned the corner when they beat the Saints on the road. Without A.J. Brown, without Devontae Smith for some of that game. But now they came crashing down against the Bucs. But they were without their top 2 weapons once again. So you think once you get A.J. Brown back, you get Devontae Smith back, things change there. But, I mean, the defense didn't play well. Again, we'll get to that. I mean, I think the Commanders, they're going to carve up the Cowboys and the Eagles' defenses. I mean, the Cowboys, too. I mean, they haven't been overly impressive. I mean, I thought the Week 1 game against the Browns, I was impressed, but the Browns are just not good offensively. The Cowboys are a team that can't really run the football. The defense has been getting shredded these last several games. Well, not the Giant game, but the previous 2 against the Ravens and against the Saints. The Commanders, you look and you see how they're playing on offense. This offense is going to shred those defenses. Both the Cowboys and the Eagles. And the Commanders are a team that plays well against the Eagles. Last year, not great against the Cowboys, but that's going to change. That is going to change. Because the Cowboys are not the same team that they've been. The same regular season team that they've been in years past. So you really got to like what the Commanders are doing. You know, it really for me, I was not a big fan of the Dan Quinn hire. I still think the defense had a lot of work that needs to be done. But Jane Daniels has been the difference maker here. I mean, they could, if they didn't have Jane Daniels playing quarterback last Monday against the Bengals, they probably lose. You know, he was impressive in that game. You know, with the Giants, I mean, if the Giants had a kicker, they win that game, but it's not the case here. Jane Daniels really has made a difference. He's playing really well. Right now, he's the front runner for Offensive Rookie of the Year. And we're going to see when him and Caleb Williams face off. That's going to be a fun game. But he's playing good football. And it looks like the Commanders got their guy. And, you know, watching Hard Knocks as a Giant fan, you know, they love Jaden Daniels. You know, they would have loved to have gotten him. But unfortunately, it's because of Tommy Cutlets. It's because of Tommy Cutlets that, you know, him winning those games, you know, that kind of hurt their draft positioning. You know, because they could have been a team that finished in the top 3. But, you know, they got those wins from Tommy Cutlets and Tyrod Taylor. And, look, Malik Neighbors is a special player. But the Giants are really in a tough spot right now because, I mean, I don't know what they're going to do at quarterback going forward. And Jane Daniels would have been great if he was a Giant with Brian Dable. But, he's doing well with Cliff Kingsbury. Maybe that's what Cliff Kingsbury has to be as an offensive coordinator. I mean, as a head coach, the Cardinals were good. It's just kind of like Mike McDaniel, another guy we'll get into later in the show, where they start off fast, but then they finish slow and, they fall out. Like the playoff game against the Rams, that was bad. But yeah, as an offensive coordinator, maybe that's where he has to stay. And then for Dan Quinn, again, I wasn't a big fan of the hire, but I will acknowledge that those first few years in Atlanta, the Falcons were making the play. Well, not 2015. 2015 they started off 5-0, and then they finished like 9-7. They got off to a fast start, and then they kind of fell off. But they went to the Super Bowl the second year, could have won it, made the playoffs the following year as well. So, he did start off good as a head coach. It's just that those last couple of years in Atlanta wasn't good. And that's why and then how the Cowboys defense performed in the playoff game against the Packers, that didn't sit well with me either. So that's why I was like, I am not a big fan of the Dan Quinn hire. But you know what? He's got these guys playing well right now. And that defense is playing well. This is a good Cardinals offense. And they shut him down. Other than the running game, they shut him down. They shut down Kyler Murray. Kyler could not get anything going through the air. And you would think he would have been able to because the Commanders' back end's not very good. But it was good here. So, yeah, the Commanders, they're legit. Now, in terms of where I would rank them, I mean, I still don't look at them as a top 5 team, but they're definitely might have to be in the top 10. There's still other teams that I would put ahead of them right now in the top 5, but I would say they're top 10. I mean, look at how many points they're scoring each week, or these last 2 weeks. 38 last week, 42 this week. I mean, that's top 10 team material right there. So, yeah, I mean, that's really my thoughts. I mean, the Commanders, I think, you don't want to jump the gun, obviously, but you definitely want to put them on notice. Definitely got to put them on notice with what they're doing right now. So, but let me know what you guys think, though, about the game. What were some of your takeaways from it? But, man, the Cardinals, these last couple weeks, yeesh. Not what you want if you're a Cardinals fan. So, but, yeah, let me know what you guys think, though, about this game. So, we're going to take our next break, and then when we come back, we will then discuss the Eagles, another NFC East team. We'll talk about them and their 33-16 loss to the Buccaneers. And that's what we'll do when we come back from our next break. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the fourth part of the show, we are now going to get into talking about the Buccaneers-Eagles game and my takeaways from it. So, the Eagles were down their top 2 weapons. So, Devontae Smith got hurt in the game on a vicious hit against the Saints last week. And the player that hit him, that slips my mind, but he was fined for that. Yeah, that should not have happened. I'm going to see if I can pull that up really quickly. But, yeah, so they were down their top 2 weapons, and they definitely missed them. Yeah, so it was Christian Boyd. So he was a defensive tackle for the Saints. Fined $4,665,000 for the hit on Devontae Smith. And that, ended up suffering a concussion from that. And he was out for the game. And like I said, the Eagles missed him, and they were already without A.J. Brown. So the Buccaneers, they opened up the game. Their first 2 possessions were touchdowns. And, once again, I picked the Eagles in this game because I thought, all right, well, their defense played really well against the Saints. Let's see them play really well now against the Bucs and avenge that playoff loss. That did not happen. That did not happen in this game. So, yeah, the Buccaneers, they scored 2 touchdowns on their first 2 possessions. Baker Mayfield connected with Mike Evans for a 2-yard touchdown. And then on the second drive, he connected with Trey Palmer for a 15-yard touchdown. Eagles punted, Bucs punted, and then, well, actually, there was a fumble on the kickoff. Cooper DeJean muffed the punt. Bucs recovered. They turned that into a touchdown. Baker Mayfield, a 1-yard touchdown run. So, yeah, 21-0 Bucs, just like that. Then it was 24-0 Bucs, as Chase McLaughlin kicked a 21-yard field goal. Eagles did respond. They scored a touchdown. Hurts connected with Paris Campbell for a 1-yard touchdown. That made it 24-7. Then the teams exchanged punts. So, yeah, it was 24-7 at the half. And then Saquon Barkley opened up the second half with a 59-yard run. Got the Eagles in great field position right at the goal line. Well, not on that run, because then Hurts connected with Goddard for a 9-yard pass. And, the tush push was put into play, and that made it 24-14. However, the Bucs, they did respond with another touchdown. Bucky Irving from 1 yard out. The extra point got blocked. The Eagles did return it for 2, so it was 30-16. Then the Eagles fumbled on their next drive. Hurts got sacked, lost the ball. And the Bucs turned that into a scoring drive. Chase McLaughlin 52-yard field goal. And then there was no scoring after that. All punts. Eagles turned it over on downs. And that was it. Jalen Hurts went 18-30 for 158 yards, 1 touchdown, no interception. Saquon Barkley, only 10 carries in this game for 84 yards. And a big chunk of that was the 59-yard run he had. Ertz had 8 carries for 20 yards and a touchdown. Kenneth Gainwell, 2 carries for 9 yards. Dallas Goedert was their leading receiver, 7 receptions for 62 yards. Barkley had 2 for 32. 2 fumbles by Jalen Hurts. One of them was a fumble loss. Cooper DeJean had a fumble that was on the punt. 2 sacks by the Eagles defense. Jake Elliott, 2 for 2 on extra points. And then as for the Buccaneers, Baker Mayfield, another solid performance, bounce-back performance after the rough game against the Broncos last week. 30 of 47, 347 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Bucs ran the ball for 111 yards. Both Bucky Irving and Rachaad White, 10 carries for 49 yards. Bucky Irving had a touchdown. Baker Mayfield had the rushing touchdown. Mike Evans, bounce-back game for him, 8 receptions for 94 yards and a touchdown. Chris Godwin, 6 for 69. Cade Otton, 6 for 52. Sterling Shepard was active in this game. 3 receptions for 51 yards, had a 30-yard reception in this game. So it's good to see him out there making plays. I miss him with the Giants, but the Giants had to let him go. Rachaad White had 2 for 35. Trey Palmer, 3 for 26 and a touchdown. There was no Jalen McMillan in this game. He was inactive. But yeah, a couple of fumble recoveries for the Bucs. And then the Bucs defense, 6 sacks in the game for them. And yeah, bounce-back performance for them. They improved to 3-1 on the season, and the Eagles dropped to 2-2. And the Bucs play on Thursday night, short week. They take on the Atlanta Falcons. And then as for the Eagles, they go into the bye, and honestly a good time for the bye week to hopefully get their top 2 receivers back, because when they come back, they'll take on the Browns. So, yeah, I wasn't super locked into this game, but really, from a distance, what happened? What happened to the Eagles in this game? At least defensively. Because, they put up this impressive performance against the Saints, a team that scored 40 points their first 2 weeks, and you hold them to 12. The Eagles had almost 500 yards of total offense in that game. And then here, the defense gets absolutely shredded, And Jalen Hurts continues to turn the ball over, and Saquon Barkley only carries the ball 10 times. You know, in a game where you're missing your top 2 weapons, why are you not giving him the ball more? I mean, they had that big splash play for 59 yards, but other than that, didn't really use him. And I guess it's because, well, they were down 21-0. So, you know, they had to throw the football more. But got to get Barkley more involved. I mean, they slowly started to creep back into this game, but it wasn't enough. But yeah, the Eagles are a very frustrating team because last week you think, all right, you know, they were without Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, but they had almost 500 yards of offense. The defense played well. Barkley had a great game. Wait till this team is back at full strength. And then, you know, you're missing your top 2 weapons, and which I get, you know, from that perspective, why the offense struggled. But the defense, they had no chance. The defense did not keep them in this game. And you're already seeing everybody talking about Vic Fangio and his bend but don't break defense. Yeah, you can't have that. But the defense is breaking. Because, I mean, you're already down 21-0. Now, the third touchdown is because, you know, you gave the Bucs good field position. But, yeah, it's not good. And the Buccaneers, they continue to own the Eagles. So, you know, this is a good time for the bye week. Hopefully, you know, for the Eagles, they get back A.J. Brown, they get back Devontae Smith, and then offensively, they'll look better. But, yeah, that was not good. Not good. And Jalen Hurts, once again, he continues to turn the ball over. That is a problem. He's had a turnover in every single game so far this year. It's a problem. You know, it doesn't seem like it's getting better. This is something that was an issue last year, and it continues. And if it continues, well, I mean, it's going to hold the Eagles back. So they got to get that straightened out. Got to get healthy. Got to limit the turnovers. And you also got to give Barkley the football more. Cannot have 10 carries in this game. Can't. Got to give him the ball more. I mean, he really fits with the Eagles. I mean, he's played so well for them. And you expected that. But also the offensive line did not play well. I mean, Jalen Hurts getting sacked 6 times. You don't want to see that. So the Eagles got a lot of things they got to clean up. But we just talked about the Commanders. I mean, look, the Commanders have their issues too. Every team does. But right now, the Commanders, they look like the best team in the division. The Eagles, they have the best. They have, overall, when you look at this team on paper, they have the most talent. But they're not playing like it. And Nick Sirianni's got to figure it out because, you know, his job is going to be on the line. If the Eagles don't have a good year, he is gone. He is gone after this year. So, but it's still early. You know, the Eagles, I mean, it could be a lot worse. I mean, they're fortunate that, you know, they very easily could be 3-1, but they could very easily be 1-3. You know, the Packers game was ugly in week 1. They could have lost that game. They could have won the Falcons game. They could have lost the Saints game. But where they're at right now, they're 2-2. It could be a lot worse. It could be better. It could be worse. But take 2-2, go into the bye week, figure some stuff out, and come out against the Browns, a team that has continued to struggle offensively, and go from there. But, yeah. Not really liking what I'm seeing from the Eagles. Like, last week showed me something. I put them in my top 5 after they beat the Saints. The degree of difficulty. You were down your 2 top weapons. You put over almost 500 yards of total offense. Your defense shut down a team that was, you know, blowing out their first 2 opponents. The Panthers and the Cowboys. So I was like, all right, maybe the Eagles turned the corner here. But the Bucs absolutely dominated this game. And I really haven't talked about the Bucs. You know, credit to them. They continue to play well. I mean, they put up a stinker against the Broncos. And look at what the Broncos defense. I mean, I credit the Broncos defense. You know, and, you know, Bo Nix managed the game. You know, the Broncos have a very good defense. They've shut them down. They shut the Jets down these last 2 weeks. And then the Bucs, they bounce right back. and Baker Mayfield continues to play well. Mike Evans had a bounce-back game. They got a nice duo with Bucky Irvin and Rachaad White. You had Vita Vea back, which was huge for that defense. And now they take on the Falcons, who they did not score an offensive touchdown on Sunday. So, that's a big divisional game here early on. And, we'll see what happens. Right now, the Bucs are in first place. With the Saints dropping their last two, the Falcons, they're 2-2. Panthers are 1-3. The Bucs are in sole possession, so this is a big game on Thursday. But that was an impressive win for them. They got Vita Vea back, like I said. He was making a difference. So we'll see what happens on Thursday. We'll make sure to preview that game on Thursday. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about this game. What were your takeaways from it? Let me know in the comments. So we are going to take our final break of the show. And then when we come back, we will recap the other game from last night. I'll talk about that, how that game unfolded, and I'll tell you whether or not I did win my fantasy matchup that I did have a chance to win. We'll get into all that when we return from our final break of the show. So, for one final time today, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we are going to now get into talking about the other game from last night between the Tennessee Titans and the Miami Dolphins. So let's get into it. So the Titans were coming in at 0-3. Dolphins were 1-2. Tua, of course, placed on IR. Last week they had Skylar Thompson start. Got hurt in that game. They had to put in Tim Boyle. And they did activate Tyler Huntley and named him the starter for this game last night. And I thought that was the right call because I think of the quarterbacks that they had at their disposal without Tua, I thought he was the best option. Now, having said that, I still believe that, but didn't really help my case last night the way he played. And this game was very interesting because the first two possessions of the game for both teams were turnovers. So the Titans got the ball to start the game. And if you remember, last year, the Titans, they pulled off a comeback win against the Dolphins. And that was with Tua. Tyreek Hill got hurt in that game, but that was with Tua. Will Levis, led the way. And they got the win. So, first drive of the game, Titans are driving. And Will Levis throws an interception to Emmanuel Ogbah. And when you read his lips on the sideline, he says that he didn't even see him. So already Will Levis turns the ball over, first possession of the game. Yeah, he just continues not to play well for the Titans. Then the Dolphins get the ball, and they fumble. Tyler Huntley fumbles. And that's recovered by the Titans. So then it's 3rd and 4 from the Titans' 42. And it looked like Will Levis picked up the first down, but for some reason the Titans didn't review it, so they ended up punting. And Will Levis actually ended up getting hurt and did not play for the remainder of the game. Ended up injuring his shoulder, did not play for the remainder of the game. And Mason Rudolph ended up taking over. And I thought, okay, maybe with Mason Rudolph, when he took over for the Steelers last year, the offense, got it going, and they rode that into the playoffs. So I thought, okay, Mason Rudolph comes in, maybe, that'll help out this offense. And it did, just not the passing game. It was the running game. Titans just ran the ball basically the entire game, the entire rest of the game. The Dolphins then punted on their next drive. Titans then put together a field goal drive. Nick Folk, he was busy last night. 53-yard field goal to make it 3-0. Titans. Dolphins turned it over on downs. The Titans turned that into another field goal drive. They made it 6-0, and that was a 52-yarder from Nick Folk. Then Jason Sanders, he kicked a 44-yard field goal to make it 6-3, and the teams just exchanged punts. And then Titans got the ball back. Mason Rudolph hit Tyler Boyd for 27 yards, down to the Dolphins' 29. They were able to spike the ball with around 2 seconds left, and Nick Folk kicked another field goal. So it was 9-3 at the half. More punts in this game. Dolphins put together a drive that resulted in a Jason Sanders 56-yard field goal to make it 9-6. However, the Titans put together a touchdown drive that was set up by a 41-yard run by Tony Pollard. And then it was a direct snap to Tajay Spears for a 7-yard touchdown. Well, it was like a trick play. Like you had both running backs. They had Mason Rudolph off to the side. Spears did a fake handoff to Pollard that ended up going for a touchdown. Spears took it right up the middle, and it was 16-6 at that point. Dolphins punted another field goal drive for the Titans. Dolphins just could not stop the run. But yeah, this resulted in a Nick Folk 51-yard field goal that made it 19-6. Dolphins turned it over on downs. Another field goal to make it 22-6. Later in the game, this was a 29-yarder. Dolphins actually put together a touchdown drive. 11 plays, 70 yards, 7 minutes of time possession. Tyler Huntley, a rushing touchdown from 1 yard out. So that made it 22-12. Titans punted, then the Dolphins ended up getting a safety, intentional grounding in the end zone. And then the Titans scored a touchdown. Tony Pollard from 4 yards out on 4th and goal. And that was really all she wrote. Mason Rudolph went 9-17 for 85 yards. Will Levis, before he got hurt, 3 for 4, 25 yards. No touchdowns, 1 interception. Titans ran the ball 40 times for 142 yards and 2 touchdowns. Tony Pollard had 88 yards on the ground in the touchdown. Tajay Spears had 39 in the touchdown. Tyler Boyd and DeAndre Hopkins both had 2 receptions for 31 yards. Tony Pollard had 2 for 20. Treylon Burks, 1 for 13. Calvin Ridley, only 1 for 5. Also did run the ball as well. 1 carry for 10 yards. The Titans defense only had 2 sacks, but they did make Tyler Huntley's life difficult. He went 14 of 22 for 96 yards. No touchdowns, no interceptions. Was their leading rusher with 40 yards. Jalen Waddle was the leading receiver. 4 receptions for 36 yards. Tyreek Hill only had 4 for 23. And the Dolphins' defense had 1 sack in the game. And, they had their opportunities. Huntley threw a deep pass down the field that was just out of the reach of Tyreek Hill. That could have been a touchdown. But, yeah, the Dolphins fall to 1-3. Titans pick up their first win of the season. So, before we get into the Dolphins side of things, or both teams' side of things, I just wanted to bring up my fantasy matchup. So, going into the game, I was down by around 10 points. So I just needed Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins to, each maybe get 5, and that was it. And they didn't do that. They did not do that, because once Will Levis got hurt, and as the game progressed and, the Dolphins' offense was not doing anything, the Titans just said, all right, we're just going to run the ball with Tony Pollard and try to stop it. And the Dolphins could not stop the run. And I ended up losing my matchup to fall to 1-3. And that would have been a big win, because I was going up against a team that's a title contender in our Dynasty League. And I'm trying to at least get into the playoffs. So that would have been a huge win for me, but They did not come through. Will Levis's injury really changed everything. Because once they took him out, because I think that was the other thing too. It's like Mason Rudolph, is the backup, and I think is still getting used to his new team in this role. So they kind of just were like, all right, we're just gonna make things easier. Just hand off the ball, and that's what he did. And the Titans got the win. So I ended up losing my matchup. I went 0-5 in fantasy this week. It was not a good week for me. Not a good week. But for both teams, give the Titans credit. They kept the Dolphins in check. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle really didn't make any plays in this game. Tyler Huntley was not good. And they got the win. And then for the Dolphins, it's just... I still think Tyler Huntley is the best option out of the quarterbacks that they have, but they missed Tua. And Mike McDaniel is getting criticized. Maybe I said he was a good coach going into the year, but I do have my questions now. Now that he's, now that we're, a quarter of the way through the season. Because the Dolphins just, even when Tua was healthy, like before he got hurt, they should have lost to Jacksonville. And Tua threw 3 picks before he got hurt against the Bills. So the Dolphins Tua was not playing well either. So it's just, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. Well, now that Tua's out, Tua would definitely have played better these last couple of weeks. He would have kept the Dolphins in these games that they've lost. But, I think it's more than just a quarterback issue. I think Mike McDaniel might be, I guess he's not as good as I thought he was. Now, I know the Dolphins have collapsed in the playoffs the last couple of years, or collapsed late in the season these last couple of years, and then, you go into the playoffs and you lose those games, but I still thought he was a good coach. Might not be the case. Yeah, they're in a weird spot right now, and this season is quickly slipping away from them. And honestly, Will Levis stays in that game. He probably turns the ball over another couple times, which would have benefited them. But, yeah, once he got taken out, they were like, all right, the Titans are like, we're just going to run the ball. Kind of like what I would do in NCAA or in Madden, just run the ball, keep the opposing offense off the field, drain a lot of clock to get the win. And the Dolphins just couldn't stop it. They could not stop the run. And it's coming, and the Dolphins just could not stop it. It's kind of like what happened with the Packers in the NFC Championship game against the 49ers, where Raheem Mostert had over 200 yards rushing, and the Packers they knew it was coming. They just couldn't stop it. That was literally what happened last night. Now, it's not like the running backs on the Titans had over 200 yards rushing. No. But that's all they did. Because they were like, well, our defense is playing well. Why are we going to put the ball in the air and put it in harm's way? Because if Mason Rudolph throws a pick in their own territory, Dolphins could cash in and score. But that never happened. So, yeah, Titans get their first win. They're on a bye. The Dolphins, they take on the Patriots in Foxborough next week. And I got to tell you, I have no idea who to pick in that game. No idea. But I might lean towards the home team. So, but yeah, this season for the Dolphins is quickly spiraling out of control. You can see Tyreek Hill is really upset on the sidelines. Not looking good. And I saw a TikTok, and for the SpongeBob fans out there, it's Tyreek Hill without a quarterback, Mahomes without his top receiver, and it's the episode where Mr. Krabs bets SpongeBob's contract and ends up losing it to Plankton. I think what was it? It was either in poker or just in cards, whatever. Well, that's what it is. In poker, whatever. And and then there's that song in the middle of the episode of them singing. So that I thought that was funny. Hopefully you guys know what I'm talking about, because otherwise that's embarrassing. But anyways, Tyreek Hill needs a quarterback, and Mahomes needs a receiver. So maybe the Dolphins trade him back. No, we'll see. But maybe Amari Cooper gets traded to the Chiefs. It's possible there, but that's something we'll talk about at a later time. But yeah, let me know what you guys think though about this game between the Titans and the Dolphins. It was not very entertaining, and then on top of that, the one fantasy matchup that I thought I was going to win, but I did say I had just as good of a chance to lose it as I did to win it, and of course I ended up losing to go 0-5 in fantasy this week. It was rough, but I did get 8 wins in the spread pool, so that was good. So at least we're moving in the right direction there. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about this game. What were your takeaways from it? Let me know in the comments. So with that is all the time that we have for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to check out all the other shows on the network. We greatly appreciate it. And until next time, I'm Kenneth Grunfelder signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit and the